Well, hello there. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Hello there. Good morning. A bit of a slow morning, huh? How's everyone doing? I know there's only Dean and the viewer, but I'm grateful enough to have one viewer, and we are only starting. Okay, so what an update of what I did yesterday. Well, Dean know what I did, but since there's no viewer here, I'm wondering if I even should even talk about it. But yesterday was quite a day, really. Like, I've never been out of my house for more than 3 hours at a time in the past, I don't know, year or so. Um, Good morning, everyone. Hey, stream's looking alright. Okay. Good morning. Oh my god, you guys came in and I just start yawning like this. That's how it is. Well, yesterday I went out because I thought that it has been a while since I dyed my hair. Like anything drastic, really. Like my plan was just to like get something like, I don't know, like a full brown or something like that. Very boring stuff. But I felt a bit like maybe I should do something, right? That it's like will freshen up how I look, even though I stay at home all the time. Nobody else will appreciate it except myself. But you know what? My self appreciation is enough. Yeah. I don't know where this conversation is going. This self conversation is going, but so I went out. By the way, any new viewers or something, I usually like chit chat for about 10 minutes before I start reading, so I'm sorry about that. Just need to buff like a little buffer time so that people can come in before I start reading, so that regulars won't miss out in case they are busy at the moment or something like that. Anyway, I went out. I told my stylist, who is also a good friend of mine. Basically, I met her when I worked there, and we stayed friends to this day. And to this day, she still gives me 50% discount. So I always go back to her. But she knows exactly how I want my hair to be styled. She knows exactly what type of hair shape or hair color suits me. So I always go back to her. So she said that, why don't we do something a little bit special, right? So I basically bleached the bottom half of my head, the hair, the bottom half, not just the hair, but like from my bottom half of, from the roots, basically the bottom half of my hair, bleach it once, and then we went with like a vermilionish color. I think after a few wash, I probably look like Azima here. That's a trend apparently. And so she told me that orange is the trend now. Maybe that's why Azima is so. Yeah, I'll probably look like this a little bit, but not the whole head. Like just half of my head. The top of my head is still black. I don't know how to explain it to you. Like the closest I can explain to you is, if I curl my hair, it will look like the pattern that PewDiePie always use for his the PewDiePie aesthetic, which is like the swirly, um, black and red color thing. So anyway, yeah. So I bleached it. It looked a little bit like this. This is why I got Azima out, because I want to explain how it looks like when they bleach it. So after they bleach it, it looks like this. And now, the red part of my hair looks like looks like this, basically. So it's not fully red, because I had red hair before, like just pure red, but it's like a combination of like a little bit orange and red. So yeah, I didn't really associate my hair color right now with Azima until like I took the minion out. I just wanted, because the title of the chapter is called "Come Rain or Come Shine," right? So since my aesthetic is so like, you know, rain, I wanted something a bit contrast with it. But when I took the minion out, and I was like, oh my god, my hair color looks just like the bottom of her hair color. Isn't that insane? Hello, King TC. Good morning. I mean, good evening where you are. Hello, good morning, good morning. I was talking about my hair color. Basically, I had my hair done yesterday, so I think I might like go to I might reflect my hair color with my character in game later after Nudibles and see how it goes. Thank you so much for being here, King TC. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so basically I had my hair bleached and dyed to the color of this red here, this vermilion red here, except the top of my hair is still black, like pure black hair, my own black hair. And then but the bottom, like from here onwards, like from my ear, above my ear onwards to all the way to the bottom, it's all red now. So it's like kind of like a subtle color and stuff. I usually talk a little bit, like chit chat a little bit about like life and stuff, or if there are more viewers, I can chit chat with them for a little bit before I start reading around 11 past 11, which is around the time now. We have like about 3 minutes to go. How are you doing, King TC? How's your streams like? Like I always wanted to catch your stream, but because you stream, around the time I go to sleep, so so I always couldn't catch your stream, unfortunately. I would love to catch your stream one day. But DZ lately? Bro, you gotta get that checked out. DZ is no good, you know? Being DZ is sometimes can... Oh my god, no wonder. Go to sleep, you insane person. Were you doing like a subathon or something? Like a follow-thon? I was thinking of doing something similar, but like maybe from morning till night until I go to sleep. Not pulling like an all-nighter or anything, because I can't do that nowadays. Unfortunately. No? Then what were you doing? What a day. I really feel like I need another cup of coffee. I'm like, this is... I want to do 24 hours mess. I had to do it. Aww. That's weird. How did it mess up though? How and why did it mess up? That's weird. How does time mess up? Did you time travel? Ah, shit, that sucks. Yeah, that's definitely been happening to me a lot too. I like, yeah, it sucks. I feel your pain, but you don't have to, like, it's fine. You don't really have to make sure that the vault is 24 hours. It's totally fine. I mean, it's understandable. I'm sure your followers understand that, you know? Oh man, I'm too old for pulling a 24-hour stream like this. I would die probably. Probably. Most probably. Hey! It's 11 past 11. We have 4 viewers in our stream right now. Welcome to Nudibles. Today we are reading Kazuo Ishiguro's Nocturnes, a short story compilation about music and nighttime. I think. Yes. We are currently on chapter 2, page 37. The chapter's name is Come Rain or Come Shine. That is why I have Azima with me while I'm being... Oh, who's that? Arum Food. Thank you so much for attending, Nudibles. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's attendance. That's an amazing glamour, by the way. That's... Yes. Thank you for the dance. That was refreshing. Anyway, books out. Alright. Everyone ready for a good read? Alright, I'll take a sip of tea and we shall start reading Come Rain or Come Shine by Kazuo Ishiguro's Nocturnes. Thank you for the redemption. Yes, I did take a sip of tea. Here we go. Like me, Emily loved the old American Broadway songs. She would go for more the up-tempo numbers like Irving Berlin's Cheek to Cheek or Cole Porter's Begin to Begin, while I leaned towards the bittersweet ballads Here's the Rainy Day or It Never Entered My Mind. But there was a big overlap, and anyway, back then, on a university campus in the south of England, it was near a miracle to find anyone who shared such passions. My apologies, I'm gonna switch. I forgot to turn off my phone. It's always super loud. My apologies. Alright, sorry. It was a near miracle to find anyone else who shared such passions. Today, a young person's likely to listen to any sort of music. My nephew, who starts university this autumn, is going through his Argentinian tango phase. He also liked Edith Piaf as well as any number of the latest indie bands, but in our day, tastes weren't nearly so diverse. My fellow students fell into two broad camps: the hippie types with their long hair and flowing garments who liked progressive rock, and the neat tweety one who considered anything other than classical music a horrible din. Occasionally, you would bump into someone who professed to be into jazz, but this would always turn out to be the so-called crossover kind of endless improvisation with no respect for the beautifully crafted songs used as their starting points. So it was a relief to discover someone else, a girl, like that. who appreciated a great American songbook. Like me, Emily collected LPs with sensitive, straightforward vocal interpretations of the standards. You could often find such records going cheap in junk shops, discarded by our parents' generations. She favored Sarah Vaughan and Chet Baker. I preferred Julie London and Peggy Lee. Neither of us was big on Sinatra or Ella Fitzgerald. In the first year, Emily lived in college and she had it in her room a portable record player, a type that was quite common then. It looked like a large hat box with the pale blue leatherette surfaces and a single built-in speaker. Only when you raised its lids would you see the turntable sitting inside. It gave out a pretty primitive sound by today's standards, but I remember us crouching around it happily for hours, taking one off track, carefully lowering the needle down onto another. We loved playing different versions of the same song, then arguing about the lyrics or about the singer's interpretations. Was that line really supposed to be sung so ironically? Was it better to sing Georgia on my mind as though Georgia was a woman or the place in America? We were especially pleased when we found a recording like Ray Charles singing Come Rain or Come Shine, where the words themselves were happy but the interpretation was pure heartbreak. Emily's love for these records was obviously so deep that I would be taken aback each time I stumbled on her talking to other students about some pretentious rock band or vacuous Californian singer-songwriter. At times, she would start arguing about a concept album in much the way she and I would discuss Gershwin and Harold Arlen, and then I would have to bite my lip not to show my irritation. Back then, Emily was slim and beautiful, and if she hadn't settled on Charlie so early in her university career, I'm sure she would have a whole bunch of men competing for her. But she was never flirty or tarty, so once she was with Charlie, the other suitors back off. That's the only reason I keep Charlie around, she told me once, with a dead straight face, then burst out laughing when I looked shocked. Just a joke, silly. Charlie's my darling, my darling, my darling. Charlie was my best friend at university. During that first year, we hung out around each other the whole time, and that's how I got to know Emily. In the second year, Charlie and Emily got a house share down in town, and though I was a frequent visitor, those discussions with Emily around her record player became a thing of the past. For a start, whenever I called around to the house, there were several other students sitting around, laughing and talking, and there was now a fancy stereo system churning out rock music that you have to shout over. Charlie and I remained close friends through the years. We may not see each other as much as we did before, but that's mainly down to the distances. I've spent years here and in Spain, as well as in Italy and Portugal, while Charlie always based himself in London. Now, if that makes me sound like I'm a jet setter and he's a stay-at-home, that would be funny. Because in fact, Charlie's the one who's flying off to Texas, Tokyo, New York to his high-powered meetings, while I've been stuck in the same humid buildings year after year, setting spelling tests or conducting the same conversations in slowed-down English. My name is Ray. What is your name? Do you have children? When I first took up English teaching after university, it seemed a good enough life. Much like an extension of university, language schools were mushrooming all over Europe, and if the teaching was tedious and the hours exploitative, at that age, you don't care that much. You spend a lot of time in bars, friends are easy to make, and there's a feeling that you're a part of a large network extending around the entire globe. You meet people fresh from their spells in Peru or Thailand, and this gets you thinking that if you wanted to, you could drift around the world indefinitely, using your contacts to get a job in a faraway corner you fancied. And always, you'll be a part of this cozy extended family of itinerant teachers swapping stories over drinks about former colleagues, psychotic school directors, eccentric British Council's officers. In the late 80s, there was a talk of making a lot of money teaching in Japan. And I made serious plans to go, but it never worked out. I thought about Brazil too, even read a few books about the culture and sent off our application forms, but somehow I never got away that far. Southern Italy, Portugal for a short spell, back here to Spain. And then before you know it, you're 47 years old, and the people you started out with have long ago been replaced by a generation who gossips about different things and take different drugs and listen to different music. Meanwhile, Charlie and Emily had married and settled out in London. Charlie once told me when they had children I'll be a godfather to one of them, but that never happened. What I mean is, a child never came along, and now I suppose it's too late. I have to admit, I've always felt slightly let down about this. Perhaps I always imagined being a godfather to one of their children would provide an official link, however tenuous, between their lives in England and mine out here. Anyway, at the start of this summer, I went to London and stayed with them. It had been arranged well in advance, and I phoned to check a couple of days beforehand. Charlie had said that they were both superbly well. That's why I had no reason to expect anything other than pampering and a relaxation after a few months that hadn't been exactly been the best in my life. In fact, as I emerged out of their local underground that sunny day, my thoughts were on the possible refinements that might have been added to my bedroom since the previous visit. Over the years, there's almost always have been something or another. One time it was a gleaming electronic gadget standing in the corner. Another time the whole place had been redecorated. In any case, almost a point of principle, the room would be prepared for me in a posh way hotel would go about things. Towels laid out, a bedside tin of biscuits, a selection of CDs on the dressing table. A few years ago, Charlie had let me in and with a nonchalant pride started flicking switches and causing all sort of subtly hidden lights to go off, and behind the headboard, above the wardrobe, and so on. Another switch had been triggered, a growling hum, and blinds had begun to descend over the two windows. "Look, Charlie, why do I need blinds?" I'd asked that time. "I want to see out when I wake up. Just the curtains will do just fine." "These blinds are Swiss," he said, as though this were explanation enough. But this time Charlie led me up the stairs mumbling to himself, and as we got to my room, I realized he was making excuses. And then I saw the room as I've never seen before. The bed was bare, the mattress on it mottled and askew. On the floor were piles of magazines and paperbacks, bundles of old clothes, and a hockey stick and a loudspeaker fallen on its side. I paused at the threshold and stared at it while Charlie cleared out a space to put down my bag. "You look like you're about to demand to see the manager," he said bitterly. No, it's just that it's unusual to see it this way." "It's a mess, I know, a mess." He sat down on the mattress and sighed. "I thought the cleaning girls would have sorted all this. Well, of course they haven't. God knows why not." He seemed very dejected, but then he suddenly sprang to his feet again. "Look, let's go out for some lunch. I'll leave a note for Emily. We can have a long leisurely lunch, and by the time we come back, your room, the whole flat, will be sorted out." "But we can't ask Emily to tidy everything." "Oh, she won't do it herself. She'll get on to the cleaners. She knows how to harass them. Me? I don't even have the number. Lunch. Let's have lunch. 3 courses, bottle of wine, everything." What Charlie called their flat was in fact the 2 top floors of 4-story terrace in a well-to-do but busy street. We came out of the front door straight into a throng of people and traffic. I followed Charlie past the shops and offices to a smart little Italian restaurant. We didn't have a reservation, but the waiters greeted Charlie like a friend and led us to a table. Looking around, I saw the place was full of business types in suits and ties, and I was glad Charlie looked as scruffy as I did. He must have guessed my thought, but because as we sat down, he said, "Oh, you're so home countries, Ray. Anyway, it's all changed now. You've been out of the country too long." Then in an alarmingly loud voice, "We look like the ones who have made it. Everyone else here looks like middle management." Then he leaned towards me and said more quietly, "Look, we've got to talk. I need you to do me a favor." I couldn't remember the last time Charlie had asked for my help for anything, but I managed a casual nod and waited. He played with his menu for a few seconds, then put it down. "The truth is, Emily and I have been going through a bit of a sticky patch. In fact, just recently we have been avoiding one another altogether. That's why she wasn't there just now to welcome you. Right now, I'm afraid you get a choice of one or the other of us. A bit like those plays when the same actor plays two parts. You can't get both me and Emily in the same room at the same time. Rather childish, isn't it?" This is obviously a bad time for me to have come. I'll go straight away, straight after lunch. I'll stay with my Auntie Katie in Finchley. "What are you talking about? You're not listening. I just told you I want you to do me a favor." "I thought that was your way of saying no, you idiot. I'm the one who has to clear out. I've got to go to a meeting in Frankfurt. I'm flying out this afternoon. I'll be back in 2 days. Thursday at the latest. Meanwhile, you stay here. You bring your things around, make everything okay again, then when I come back, say a cheerful hello, kiss my darling wife like the last 2 months haven't happened, and we pick up again." At this point, the waitress came to take our order, and after she had gone, Charlie seemed reluctant to take up the subject again. Instead, he fired questions at me about my life in Spain, and each time I told him anything good or bad, he would do this sour little smile and shake his head like I was confirming his worst fears. At one point, I was trying to tell him how much I improved as a cook, how I had prepared Christmas buffet for over 40 students and teachers virtually single-handed, but he just cut me off in mid-sentence. "Listen to me," he said. "Your situation's hopeless. You've got to hand in your notice. But first, you have to get your new job lined up. This Portuguese depressive used him as a go-between. Secure the Madrid post, then ditch the apartment. Okay, here's what you got to do. 1. He held up his hand and began counting off each instruction as he made it. Our food arrived when he still had a couple of fingers to go, but he ignored it and carried on till he finished. Then, as we began to eat, he said, I can tell you won't do any of this." No, everything you say is very sound. You'll go back and carry on just the same, then we'll be here again next year in time and you'll be moaning about the same things." "I wasn't moaning. You know, Ray, there's only so much other people can suggest to you. At a certain point, you've got to take charge of your life." "Okay, I will, I promise. But you were saying earlier something about a favor." "Ah, yes." He chewed his food thoughtfully. "To be honest, this was my real motive in inviting you over. Of course, it's great to see you and all that, but for me, the main thing I want you to do something for me. After all, you're my oldest friend, a lifelong friend." Suddenly, he began eating again, and I realized with astonishment he was sobbing quietly. I reached across the table and prodded his shoulder, but he just kept shoveling pasta into his mouth without looking up. When this had gone on for a minute or so, I reached over and gave him another prod, but this had no more effect than my first one. Then the waitress appeared with a cheerful smile to check on our food. We both said everything was excellent, and she went off. Charlie seemed to be more himself again. "Okay, Ray, listen. What I'm asking you to do is dead simple. All I want you to do is hang out with Emily for the next few days. Be a pleasant guest, that's all. Just until I get back. That's all? You're asking me to look after her while you're gone? That's it. Or rather, let her look after you. You're the guest. I've lined up some things for you to do. Theater tickets and so on. I'll be back on Thursday at the latest. Your mission is just to get her in a good mood and keep her that way. So when I come in and say hello darling and hug her, she'll just reply, oh hello darling, welcome home, how's everything? And hug me back. And then we can carry on as before. Before all this horrible stuff began. That's your mission. It's quite simple, really. I'm happy to do anything I can, I said. But look, Charlie, are you sure she's in the mood to entertain visitors? You are obviously going through some sort of crisis. She must be as upset as you are. Quite honestly, I don't understand why you are asking me here right now. What do you mean? You don't understand? I've asked you because you are my oldest friend. Yes, alright, I've got a lot of friends, but when it comes down to it, when I thought hard about it, I realized that you are the only one who would do. I have to admit, I was rather moved by this, but at the same time, I could see there was something not quite right here. Something he wasn't telling me. I can understand you inviting me here to stay if you are both going to be here, I said. I can see how that would work. You're not talking to each other, you invite a guest as a diversion, you put on your both best behavior, things start to thaw. But it's not going to work in this case because you're not going to be here. Just do it for me, Ray. I think it might work. Emily is always cheered up by you. Cheered up by me? You know, Charlie, I want to help. But it's possible you've got this a bit wrong. Because I get the impression, quite frankly, Emily isn't cheered up by me at all. Even at the best of times. The last few visits here, she was, well, distinctly impatient with me. Look, Ray, just trust me. I know what I'm doing. Emily was at the flat when we returned. I have to admit, I was taken aback at how much she has aged. It wasn't just that she got significantly heavier since my last visit. Her face, once so effortlessly graceful, was now distinctly bulldoggy and a displeased set to the mouth. She was sitting on the living room sofa reading the Financial Times and got up rather gloomily as I came in. Nice to meet you, Raymond, she said, kissing me quickly on the cheek and then sitting down again. The whole way she did this made me want to blurt out a profuse apology for intruding at such a bad time. But before I could say anything, she thumped the space on beside her on the sofa, saying, Now, Raymond, sit down here and answer my questions. I want to know all about what you have been up to. I sat down and she began to interrogate me, much as Charlie had done in the restaurant. Charlie, meanwhile, was packing for his journey, drifting in and out of the room in search of various items. I noticed they didn't even look at each other. But neither did they seem uncomfortable being in the same room, despite what he had claimed. And although they never spoke directly to each other, Charlie kept joining in conversation in an odd, once-removed manner. For instance, I was explaining to Emily why it was so difficult to find a flatmate to share my rent burden. Charlie shouted in the kitchen, The place he's in is not just geared up for 2 people, it's for 1 person. And 1 person with a bit more money than he'll ever have. Emily made no response to this, but must have been absorbed the information because she then went on, Raymond, you should never have chosen an apartment like that. This sort of thing continued for at least the next 20 minutes, Charlie making his contributions from the stairs or as he passed through the kitchen, usually by shouting out some statement that referred to me in third person. At one point, Emily said, Oh, honestly, Raymond, you let yourself be exploited left, right, and center by that ghastly language school. You let your landlord read you off silly, and what do? Get in tow with some airhead girl with a drink problem and not even a job to support it. It's like you are deliberately trying to annoy anyone who still give a shit about you. He cannot expect many of that tribe to survive. Charlie boomed from the hall. I could hear he had his suitcase out there. It's all very well behaving like an adolescent 10 years after you cease to become one. But to carry on like this when you are nearly 50. I'm only 47. What do you mean you're only 47? Emily's voice was unnecessarily loud given I was sitting right next to her. Only 47. This is what's destroying your life, Raymond. Only doing my best. Only 47. Soon you'll be 67 and only going around in bloody circles trying to find a bloody roof to keep over your head. He needs to get his bloody ass together, Charlie yelled down the stairs. Fucking well, pull up his socks till they're touching his fucking balls. Raymond, don't you ever stop and ask yourself who you are? Emily asked. When you think of all your potential, aren't you ashamed? Look at how you led your life. It's simply infuriating. One gets so exasperated. Charlie appeared in the doorway in his raincoat, and for a moment they were shouting different things at me simultaneously. Then Charlie broke off, announced he was leaving as though he in disgust at me, and vanished. His departure brought Emily's diatribe to a halt, and I took the opportunity to get on my feet, saying, "Excuse me, I'll just go and give Charlie a hand with his luggage." "Why do I need a hand with my luggage?" Charlie said from the hall. "I've only got one bag." But he let me follow him down into the street and left me with a suitcase while he went to the edge of the curb to hail a cab. There didn't seem to be any to hand, and he leaned out worriedly and an arm raised. I went up to him and said, "Charlie, I don't think it's going to work." "What's not going to work?" "Emily absolutely hates me. That's her after seeing me for a few minutes. What's she going to be like after 3 days? Why on earth do you think you'll come back to harmony and light?" Even as I was saying this, something was dawning on me and I felt silent. Noticing this change, Charlie turned and looked at me carefully. "I think," I said eventually, "I have an idea why it had to be me and no one else." "Aha! Can it be that Ray sees the light?" "Yes, maybe I do. But what does that matter? It remains the same, exactly the same, what I'm asking you to do." Now, there were tears in his eyes again. "Do you remember, Ray, the way Emily always used to say she believed in me? She said it for years and years. I believe in you, Charlie. You can go all the way. You're really talented. Right up until 3 or 4 years ago, she was still saying it. Do you know how trying that got? I was doing alright. I am doing alright. Perfectly okay. But she thought I was destined for, I don't know, God knows, president of the fucking world. God knows. I'm just an ordinary bloke who's doing alright. But she just doesn't see that. That's the heart of it. At the heart of everything that's gone wrong." He began to walk slowly along the pavement, very preoccupied. I hurried back to get his suitcase and began pulling it along on its rollers. The street was still fairly crowded, so it was a struggle to keep up with him without crashing the bag into other pedestrians. But Charlie kept walking at a steady pace, oblivious to my difficulties. "She thinks I've let myself down," he was saying. "But I haven't. I've been doing okay. Endless horizons are all very well when you're young, but get to our age, you've got to get some perspective." That's what kept going round and round in my head whenever she got so unbearable about it. Perspective, she needs perspective. And I kept saying to myself, "Look, I'm doing okay. Look at loads of other people we know. Look at Ray, look at the big arse he's making of his life. He needs perspective." "So you decided to invite me for a visit, to be Mr. Perspective." At last, Charlie stopped and met my eyes. "Don't get me wrong, Ray. I'm not saying that you are an awful failure or anything. I realize you're not a drug addict or a murderer, but beside me, let's face it, you don't look the highest of achievers. That's why I'm asking you to do this for me. Things are on their last legs with us. I'm desperate. I need you to help. And what am I asking, for God's sake? Just that you be your sweet, usual self. Nothing more, nothing less. Just do it for me, Raymond. For me and Emily. It's not over between us yet. I know it isn't. Just for yourself. Just be yourself for a few days until I get back. That's not too much to ask, is it? I took a deep breath and said, okay. If you think it will help, it will help. But isn't Emily going to see through all this sooner or later? Why should she? She knows I've got an important meeting in Frankfurt. To her, the whole thing's straightforward. She's looking after a guest, that's all. She likes to do that and she likes you. Look, a taxi. She waved frantically, and as the driver came towards us, he grabs my arm. Thanks, Ray. You swing it for us. I know you will. I returned to find Emily's manner had undergone a complete transformation. She welcomed me into the apartment in the way she might a very aged and frail relative. There were encouraging smiles, gentle touches on the arm. When I agreed to some tea, she led me into the kitchen, sat me down at the table, then for a few seconds stood there regarding me with a concerned expression. Eventually she said softly, I'm sorry I went on at you like that earlier, Raymond. I've got no right to talk to you like that. Then, turning away to make the tea, she went on. It's years now since we were at the university together. I always forget that. I'd never dream of talking to any other friend that way. But when it comes to you, well, I suppose I look at you and it's like we are back there. The way we all were there, and I just forget. You really mustn't take it too hard. No, I haven't taken it too hard at all. I was still thinking about the conversation I just had with Charlie, and probably seemed distant. I think Emily misinterpreted this because her voice became even more gentle. I'm so sorry I upset you. She was carefully laying out a row of biscuits on a plate in front of me. The thing is, Raymond, back in those days, we could say virtually anything to you. You would just laugh and we would laugh and everything would be a big joke. It's so silly of me thinking that you would still be like that. Well, actually I'm more or less still like that. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't realize, she went on, apparently not hearing me, how different you are now. How close to the age you must be. Look, really, Emily, I'm not so bad. I suppose the passing years have just left you high and dry. You are like a man on the precipice. One more tiny little push and you will crack. Fall, you mean? She had been fiddling with the kettle, but now turned round to stare at me again. No, Raymond, don't talk like that. Not even in fun. I don't want to ever hear you talking like that. No, you misunderstand. You said I would crack, but if I'm on the precipice, I would fall, not crack. Oh, you poor thing. She still didn't seem to take in what I was saying. You are only a husk of the Raymond from those days. I decided it might be best not to respond this time, and for a few moments we waited quietly for the kettle to boil. She prepared a cup for me, though not for herself, and placed it right in front of me. I'm so sorry, Ray, but I've got to get back to the office now. There are 2 meetings I absolutely can't miss. If only I'd known how you'd be, I wouldn't have deserted you. I would have made other arrangements, but I haven't. I expected you back. Poor Raymond. What will you be doing here all by yourself? I'll be terrific, really. In fact, I was thinking, why don't I get our dinner ready while you're gone? You probably won't believe this, but I've become quite a good cook these days. In fact, we had this buffet just before Christmas. That's terribly sweet of you wanting to help, but I think it's best you just rest now. After all, an unfamiliar kitchen can be the source of so much stress. Why don't you just make yourself completely at home? Have a herbal bath, listen to some music. I'll take care of dinner when I come in. But you don't have to worry about food after a long day at the office. No, Ray, you are just too relaxed. She produced a business card and placed it on the table. This has got my direct line on it. My mobile too. I've got to go now, but you can call me anytime you want. Now remember, don't take on anything stressful while I'm gone. For some time now, I've been finding it hard to relax properly in my own apartment. If I'm alone at home, I get increasingly restless, bothered by the idea that I'm missing some crucial encounter out there somewhere. But if I'm left by myself in someone else's place, I often find a nice sense of peace engulfing me. I love sinking into an unfamiliar sofa, and with whatever book happens to be lying nearby. And that's exactly what I did this time. After Emily left, or at least I managed to read a couple chapters of Mansfield's Park before dozing off for 20 minutes or so. When I woke up, the afternoon sun was coming into the flat. Getting off the sofa, I began a little nose around. Perhaps the cleaners had indeed been in during our lunch, or maybe Emily had done the tidying herself. In any case, the large living room was looking pretty immaculate. Tidiness aside, it has been stylishly done up with modern designer furniture and arty objects, though someone being unkind might have said it was all too obviously for effect. I took a browse through the books and then glanced through the CD collection. It was almost entirely rock or classical, but finally, after some searching, I found tucked away in the shadows a small collection devoted to Fred Astaire, Chet Baker, and Sarah Vaughan. It puzzled me that Emily hadn't placed more of her treasured vinyl collection with the CD reincarnations, but I didn't dwell on this and wandered off into the kitchen. I was opening a few cupboards in search of biscuits or a chocolate bar when I noticed what seemed to be a small notebook on the kitchen table. It had purple cushion covers, which made it stand out amidst the sleek minimalist surfaces of the kitchen. Emily, in a big hurry just before she had left, had been emptying and refilling her bag on the table while I'd been drinking my tea. Obviously, she had left the notebook behind by mistake. But then, in almost the next instant, another idea came to me. That this purple book was some kind of intimate diary, and Emily had left it there on purpose, fully intending me to have a peek. That, for whatever reason, she felt unable to confide more openly, so had resorted to this way of sharing her inner thoughts, inner turmoils. I stood there for a while staring at the notebook. Then I reached forward, inserted my forefinger into the pages at midway point, and gingerly levered it up. The sight of Emily's closely packed handwriting inside made me pull my finger out. I moved away from the table, telling myself that I had no business nosing in there. Never mind what Emily had intended in an irrational moment, and went back into the living room, settled into the sofa, and read a few more pages of Mansfield's Park. And now I found myself couldn't concentrate. My mind kept going back to the purple notebook. What if it hadn't been an impulsive action at all? What if she had planned this for days? What if she had composed something carefully for me to read? After another 10 minutes, I went back into the kitchen and stared some more at the purple notebook. Then I sat down where I had sat before to drink my tea, slid the notebook towards me, and opened it. One thing that quickly apparent was that if Emily confided her innermost thoughts to a diary, then the book was elsewhere. What I had before me was at best a glorified appointments diary, Under each day she would scrawl various memos to herself, some with a distinct aspirational dimension. One entry in a bold felt tip when, if still not phone Matilda, why the hell not? Another one ran, finish Philip bloody Roth, give back to Marion. Then, as I kept turning the pages, I came across Raymond coming on Monday, groan. I turned a couple more pages to find Ray tomorrow, how to survive. Finally, written that very morning amidst the reminders for various chores, buy wine for arrival of Prince of Winers. Prince of Winers? It took me some time to accept this really could be referring to me. I tried out all sorts of possibilities. A client, a plumber, but in the end, given the date and the context, I had to accept there was no other serious candidate. Then suddenly the sheer unfairness of her giving me such a title hit me with such unexpected force, and before I knew it, I had screwed up the offending page in my hand. It wasn't a particularly fierce action. I didn't even tear the page. I simply closed my fist on it in a single motion, and the next second I was in control again. But of course, by then, it was too late. I opened my hand to discover not only the page in question was also the two beneath it had fallen victim to my wrath. I tried to flatten the pages back to their original form, but they simply curled back up again, as though their deepest wish was to be transformed into a ball of rubbish. It's all the same. For quite some time, I carried on performing a kind of panic ironing motion on the damaged pages. I was just about coming to accept that my efforts were pointless, that nothing I now did could successfully conceal what I had done, when I became aware of a phone ringing somewhere in the apartment. I decided to ignore it and went on trying to think through the implication of what had just happened. But then, the answering machine came on and I could hear Charlie's voice leaving the message. Perhaps I sensed a lifeline. Perhaps I just wanted someone to confide in. But I found myself rushing into the living room and grabbing the phone off the glass coffee table. "Oh, you are there!" Charlie sounded slightly cross. I'd interrupted his message. "Charlie, listen, I've done something rather stupid. I'm at the airport," he said. "The flight's been delayed. I want to call the car service that's picking me up in Frankfurt, but I didn't bring the number, so I need you to read it over to me." She began to issue instructions about where I would find the phone book, but I interrupted him and saying, "Look, I've just done something stupid. I don't know what to do." There was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Maybe you are thinking, Ray. Maybe you're thinking there's someone else. That I'm going off now to see her. It occurred to me that might be what you are thinking. After all, it would fit everything you have observed. The way Emily was when I left, all that, but you're wrong." "Yes, I take your point, but look, there's something I have to talk to you about. Just accept it, Ray. You're wrong. There's no other woman. I'm going to Frankfurt to attend a meeting about changing our agency in Poland. That's where I'm going right now." "Right, I've got you. There has never been another woman in any of this. I wouldn't look at anyone else, at least not in any serious way. That's the truth. It's the bloody truth, and there's nothing else to it." He started to shout, as though possibly this was because of all the noise around him in the departure lounge. Now he went quiet, and I listened hard to work out if he was crying again, but all I heard were airport noises. Suddenly he said, "I know you are thinking. You're thinking, all right, there's no other woman, but is there another man? Go on, admit it. That's what you're thinking, isn't it? Go on, say it." "Actually, no, it never occurred to me that you might be gay. Even given that time after the finals you got really drunk and pretended to." "Shut up, you fool. I meant another man. as in lover of Emily. Lover of Emily. Does this figure bloody does this figure bloody exist? That's what I'm getting at. And the answer in my judgment is no, no, no. After all these years, I can read her pretty well. But the trouble is precisely because I know her so well, I can tell something else too. I can tell. She has something to think about. That's right, Ray. She's looking at other guys. Guys like David bloody Corey. Who's that? David bloody Corey is smarmy git of a barrister who's doing well for himself. I know exactly how well because she tells me how well in excruciating detail. You think they're seeing each other? No, I just told you. There's nothing. Not yet. Anyway, David bloody Corey wouldn't give her the time of day. He's married to a glamour puss who works for Condé Nast. Then you are okay. I'm not okay because there's also Michael Addison and Roger Vandenberg, who's a rising star at the Merrill Lynch, who gets all the way up to the World Economics Forum every year. Look, Charlie, please listen. I've got the problem here. Small, but by small standard, I admit. But a problem all the same. Please just listen. At last, I've got to tell him what had happened. I recounted everything as honestly as I could, though maybe I went on the bit about my thinking Emily had left a confidential message for me. I know it was really stupid, I said as I came to the end, but she left it sitting there, right there on the kitchen. Yes, Charlie was now sounding much calmer. Yes, you have let yourself in for it there. Then he laughed. Thank you, Tochien. Oh, thank you, Tochien, for being here. Thank you. Oh my god. Sorry. Jesus Christ. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Oh no, oh no. 1 second, please. I don't know what happened to my... Oh, that was horrifying to see. I don't know what happened. Jesus Christ, that was scary. That's actually scary, bro. It's alright. I'm fine now. I'm no longer twitching. I wasn't having a stroke, don't worry. I don't know. I just went for a drink. Like, I just moved back. I just take my cup up and drink. And then it just went fucking insane. Scary. Scary shit indeed. Is that you? Oh, it's Yujung. Hey. Thank you for being here. Anyway, let's continue. Then he laughed, encouraged by this, I laughed too. I suppose I'm overreacting, I said. After all, it's not like a personal diary or anything, it's just a memo book. I cheered off because Charlie had continued to laugh. And there was something a touch hysterical in his laughter. Then he stopped and said flatly, if she finds out, she'll want to saw your balls off. Then there was a short pause while I listened to airport noises. Then he went on. About 6 years ago, I opened that book myself, or that year's equivalent, just casually when I was sitting in the kitchen and she was doing some cooking. You know, I just flicked it open absent-mindedly while I was saying something stupid. She noticed it immediately and told me she wasn't happy about it. In fact, that's when she told me she would saw my balls off. She was wielding this rolling pin at the time, so I pointed out that she wouldn't very well do what she was threatening with the rolling pin. That's when she said the rolling pin was for afterwards, for what she would do to them after she had cut it off. A flight announcement went off in the background. So what do I suggest I what do you suggest I do? I ask. What can you do? Just keep smoothing the pages down. Maybe she won't notice. I've been trying that. It just doesn't work. There's no way she won't notice. Look, Ray, I've got a lot in my mind. Alright? What I'm trying to tell you is that all these men Emily dreams about, they are not really potential lovers. They are just figures she thinks they are wonderful because she believes they've accomplished so much. She doesn't see their warts, their sheer brutality. They are all out of her league anyway. The point is, and this is what's so pathetically sad and ironic about all this, the point is, at the bottom of it all, she loves me. She still loves me. I can tell. So Charlie, you don't have any advice? No, I don't have any fucking advice. He was shouting full blast again. You figure it out. You get on your plane and I'll get on mine and we'll see which one crashes. With that, Charlie was gone. I slumped down into the sofa and took a deep breath. I told myself I had to keep things in proportion, but all the while I could feel in my stomach a vaguely nauseous sensation of panic. Various ideas ran through my mind. One solution was simply to flee the apartment and have no contact with Charlie and Emily for several years, after which I had sent them a cautious, carefully worded letter. Even in my current state, I dismissed this plan as being a touch too desperate. A better plan that I would state was that I steadily worked through the bottles in their drinks cabinet so that when Emily arrived home she'd find me pathetically drunk. Then I could claim to have looked through a diary and attacked the pages in alcoholic delirium. In fact, in my drunken unreasonableness, I could even adopt the role of an injured party, shouting and pointing, telling her how bitterly hurt I'd been to read those words about me, written by someone whose love and friendship I have always counted on. The thought of which helped sustain me through my lousiest moments in strange and lonely countries. But while this plan had points to recommend it from a practical aspect, I could sense something here, something near the bottom of it, something I didn't care to examine too closely, that I knew would make it an impossibility for me. After a time, the phone began to ring again, and Charlie's voice came onto the machine again. When I picked it up, he sounded considerably calmer than before. "I'm at the gate now," he said. "I'm sorry if I was a little flustered earlier on. Airports always make me that way. Can't ever settle until I'm sitting right by the gate. Ray, listen, there's just one thing that occurred to me concerning our strategy." "Our strategy?" "Yes, our overall strategy. Of course, you've just realized this isn't the time for a little tweaking of truth to show yourself in a better light. Absolutely not the time for a small self-aggrandizing white lie. No. You're remembering, aren't you, why you were given this job in the first place? Ray, I'm depending on you to present yourself to Emily just as you are. So long as you do that, our strategy stays on the course." "Well, look, I'm hardly on the course here to come over like Emily's greatest hero." "Yes, you appreciate the situation and I'm grateful. But something's just occurred to me. There's just one little thing in your repertoire that won't quite do here. You see, Ray, she's got this idea that you have good musical taste." "Ah." "Just about the only time she ever uses you to belittle me is in this area of musical taste. It's the one respect in which you aren't absolutely perfect for your current assignment. So, you've got to promise not to talk about this topic. Oh, for God's sake, just do it for me, Ray. It's not much to ask. Just don't start going on about that. The croony, nostalgic music she likes. And if she brings up, then just play it dumb. That's all I'm asking. Otherwise, you just be your natural self. Ray, I can count on you about this, can't I? Well, I suppose so. This is all pretty theoretical anyway. I don't see us chatting about anything this evening. Good. So that's settled. Now, let's move to your little problem. You'll be glad to hear I've been giving it some thought. And I've come up with a solution. Are you listening? Yes, I'm listening. There's this couple who keeps coming around, Angela and Solly. They are okay, but if they weren't neighbors, we wouldn't have much to do with them. Anyway, they often come around, dropping in without warning, expecting a cup of tea. Now here's the point. They turn up at various times in the day, and they've been taking Hendrix out. Hendrix? Hendrix, a smelly, uncontrollable, possibly homicidal Labrador. For Angela and Solly, of course, this foul creature is the child they never had. Or the one they haven't had yet. They're probably still young enough to have real children. But no. They prefer darling Hendrix. And when they call around, darling Hendrix routinely goes about demolishing the place as determinedly as any disaffected burglar. Down goes the standard lamp. Oh dear, never mind, darling. Do you have a fright? You get the picture? Now listen. About a year ago, we have this coffee table book. Cost a fortune, full of arty pictures of a young gay man posing in North African kasbahs. Emily liked to keep it open at this particular page. She thought it went on with the sofa. She would go mad if you turned the page. Anyway, about a year ago, Hendrix came and chewed it all out. That's right, sank his teeth onto the glossy photography, went on to chew up about 20 pages in all before Mommy could persuade him to desist. You see why I'm telling this to you right now, don't you? Yes, that is. I see a hint of an escape route, but alright, I'll spell it all out. This is what you tell Emily. The door when you answer it, these couples are there and with Hendrix tugging at the leash. They tell you they are Angela and Solly, good friends needing a cup of tea. You let them in, Hendrix run wild, chew up a diary. It's utterly plausible. What's the matter? Why aren't you thanking me? Won't quite do for you, sir? I'm very grateful, Charlie. I'm just thinking it through, that's all. Look. For one thing, what if these people really turn up after Emily's home, That's possible, I suppose. All I can say that you'd be very unlucky if such thing happened. When I said they come around a lot, maybe once a month, so stop picking holes and be grateful. But Charlie, isn't it a little far-fetched that this dog would chew up the diary and those exact pages? I heard him sigh. I assume you didn't need the rest of it to be spelled out. Naturally, you have to do the place over a bit, knock over some standard lamps, spill sugar over the kitchen floor. You have to make it look like Hendrix did this in a whirlwind job on the place. Look, they are calling for the flight. I've got to go. I'll check in with you when I'm in Germany. While listening to Charlie, a feeling had come over me similar to the one I get when someone starts on about a dream they had, or the circumstances that led to the little bump on the car door. His plan was all very well, ingenious even, but I couldn't see how it had to do with anything I was really likely to say or do when Emily got home, and I found myself getting more and more impatient. But once Charlie had gone, I found his call had been kind of a hypnotic effect on me, even as my head was dismissing his ideas as idiotic, my arms and legs were setting out to put his solution into action. I began by putting the standard lamp down on its side. I was careful not to bump anything with it, and I removed the shade first, putting it back on at a cocked angle only once the whole thing was arranged on the floor. Then I took down the vase from the bookshelf, laid it down on the rug, spreading around it the dried grass that had been inside. Next, I selected a good spot near the coffee table to knock over the waste paper basket. I went on about my work in a strange, disembodied mode. I didn't want any of it. I didn't believe any of it would achieve anything, but I was finding the whole procedure quite soothing. Then I remembered all this vandalism was supposed to relate to the diary and went through the kitchen. After a little think, I took a bowl of sugar from the cupboard and placed it on the table not far from the purple notebook. Slowly tilted it until the sugar slid down. I had a bit of a job preventing the bowl rolling off the edge of the table, but in the end got it to stay put. By this time, the gnawing panic I'd been feeling had evaporated. I wasn't tranquil exactly, but now it seemed silly to have gotten myself in the state I had. I went back to the living room, lay down on the sofa, and picked up the Jane Austen book. After a few lines, I felt a huge tiredness coming over me, and before I knew it, I was slipping into sleep once more. I was woken up by the phone when Emily's voice came on the machine. I sat up and answered it. "Oh, good! Raymond, are you there? How are you, darling? How are you feeling now? Have you managed to relax?" I assured her that I had, in fact, been sleeping. "Oh, what a pity! You probably haven't been sleeping properly for weeks, and now just when you finally get a moment's escape, I go and disturb you. I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry too. Ray, I'm going to disappoint you. There's been an absolute crisis on here, and I won't be able to get home quite quickly as I hope. In fact, I'm going to be another hour, or at least. You'll be able to hold out, won't you?" I reiterated how relaxed and happy I was feeling. "Yes, you do sound really stable now. I'm so sorry, Raymond, but I've got to go and sort this out. Help yourself to anything and everything. Goodbye, darling." I put down the phone and stretched my arm. The light was starting to fade now, so I went about the apartment switching on light. Then I contemplated my wrecked living room, and the more I looked at it, the more it seemed overwhelmingly contrived. The sense of panic began to grow once more in my stomach. The phone went again. This time it was Charlie. He told me beside the luggage carousel at Frankfurt Airport. "They're taking bloody ages. We haven't had a single bag come down yet. How are you making it out there? Mother not home yet?" "No, not yet. Look, Charlie, that plan of yours, it's not going to work." "What do you mean it's not going to work? Don't tell me you've been twiddling your thumb all this time mulling it over." "I've done exactly you suggested. I just messed up the place, but it doesn't look convincing. It just doesn't look like a dog's been here. It just looks like an art exhibition." He was silent for a moment, and perhaps concentrating on the carousel. Then he said, "I can understand your problem. It's someone else's property. You're bound to be inhibited. So listen, I'm going to name a few items I would clearly love to see damaged. Are you listening, Ray? I want the following things ruined. The stupid China ox thing is by the CD player. That's a present from David bloody Corey after his trip to Lagos. You can smash that up for a start. In fact, I don't care what you destroy. Destroy everything. Charlie, I think you need to calm down." Okay. "But the apartment's full of junk. Just like our marriage now. Full of tired junk. That spongy red sofa. You know what I mean, Ray?" "Yes, I actually fell asleep on it just now. That should have been in the skip ages ago. Why don't you rip open the covering and throw the stuffing around?" "Charlie, you have got to get a grip. In fact, it occurs to me you're not trying to help me at all. You're just using me as a tool to express your rage and frustration." "Oh, shut up with that bollocks. Of course I'm trying to help you. And of course my plan's a good one. I guarantee it will work. Emily hates that dog. She hates Angela and Solly. So she'll seize any opportunity to hate them even more. Listen." His voice suddenly dropped to a near whisper. "I'll give you a big tip. secret ingredient that will ensure she's so convinced. I should have thought of this before. How much time do you have left? Another hour or so? Look. Good. Listen carefully. Smell. That's right. You've got to make the place smell like dog. The moment you walk in, she'll register it, even if it's just subliminally. Then she steps into the room, notices darling David's china ox smashed up on the floor, and the stuffing on the foul red sofa all over. Now look, I didn't say I would. Just listen. She'll see the wreckage, and immediately, consciously or unconsciously, she'll make the connection with the dog smell. The whole scene with Hendrix will flash vividly through her head even before you say a word to her. That's the beauty of it. You are havering, Charlie. Okay, so how do I make your home pong of dog? I know exactly how you create a dog smell. His voice was still an excited whisper. I know exactly how you do it because me and Tony Barton used to do it in the lower six. He still had the recipe. But I'll refine it. But why? Why? Because it stank more like cabbage than dog, that's why. No, I meant, why would you... Look, never mind. You might as well just tell me as long as it doesn't involve going out and buying a chemistry set. Good. You're coming around to it. Get a pen, Ray. Write this down. Ah, here it comes. He must have put this phone in his pocket because for the next few moments I listened to womb noises. Then he came back and said, I've got to go down. So write this down. Are you ready? The middle-sized saucepan. It's probably on the stove already. Put about a pint of water in it. Add 2 beef stalks cubed, 1 dessert spoon of cumin, 1 tablespoon of paprika, 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and a generous lot of bay leaves. Got that? You put in there a leather shoe or a boot upside down so the sole is not actually immersed in the liquid. That's so you don't get a hint of burning rubber. Then turn on the gas, bring the concoction to the boil, let it sit there simmering. Pretty soon you'll notice a smell. It's not an awful smell. Tony Barton's original recipe involved garden slugs, but this one is much more subtle. Just like a smelly dog. I know you're going to ask me where to find the ingredients. All the herbs and stuff are in the kitchen cupboard. So if you go to the upstairs cupboard, you'll find a discarded pair of boots in there. Not the Wellingtons, but the battered up pair. They are more like a built-up shoe. I used to wear them all the time on the common. They have had it, and they've been waiting for the heave. Take one of those. What's the matter? Look, Ray, you just do this, okay? Save yourself, because I'm telling you. An angry Emily is no joke. I've got to go now. Oh, and remember, no showing off your wonderful music knowledge. Perhaps it was simply the effect of receiving a clear set of instructions, however dubious. When I put the phone down, a detached, businesslike mood had come over me, and I could see clearly what I needed to do. I went into the kitchen and switched on the lights. Sure enough, the middle-sized saucepan was sitting on the cooker, awaiting its next task. I filled it to halfway with water, put it back onto the hob. Even as I was doing this, I realized there was something else I had to establish before proceeding any further, namely the precise amount of time I had to complete my work. I went into the living room, picked up the phone, and called Emily's work number. I got to her assistant, who told me Emily was in a meeting. I insisted in a tone that balanced geniality and resolution that she brings Emily out of her meeting, if indeed she's in one at all. The next moment, Emily was on the line. What is it, Raymond? What happened? Nothing happened. I'm just calling to find out how you are. Ray, you sound odd. What is it? What do you mean I sound odd? I just called to establish when to expect you back. I know you regard me as a layabout, but I still appreciate the timetable of sort. There's no need to get cross like that, Raymond. Now let me see. It's going to be An hour, maybe an hour and a half. I'm awfully sorry, but there's a real crisis on here. An hour to 90 minutes. That's fine. That's all I need to know. Okay, I'll see you soon. You can get back to your business now. She might have been wanting to say something else, but I hung up and strode back into the kitchen, determined not to let my decisive mood evaporate. In fact, I was beginning to feel distinctly exhilarated, and I couldn't understand at all how I would allow myself to get into such a state of despondency earlier on. I went through the cupboards and lined up, in a neat row beside the hob, all the herbs and spices I needed. Then I measured them out into the water and gave it a quick stir and went off to find the boot. The understairs cupboard was hiding a whole heap of sorry-looking footwear. After a few moments of rummaging, I've discovered what was certainly one of the boots Charlie was describing, a particularly exhausted specimen with ancient mud and encrusted along the rim of its heel. Holding it with my fingertips, I took it back into the kitchen and placed it carefully into the water with the sole facing up to the ceiling. Then I lit a medium flame under the pan, sat down at the table, and waited for the water to heat. When the phone rang again, I felt reluctant to abandon the saucepan. Then I heard Charlie on the machine going on, and I eventually returned to the flame low, and went to answer him. "What are you saying?" It sounded particularly self-pitying, but I was busy, so I missed it. "I'm at the hotel. It's only 3-star. Can you believe it? The cheek! A big company like them. And it's a poxy little room, too. But you're only there for a couple of nights." "Listen, Ray. There's something I wasn't entirely honest about earlier. It's not fair on you. After all, you're doing me a favor. You're doing your best for me, trying to heal things with Emily, but here I am being less than frank with you. If you're talking about the recipe for the dog smell, it's too late. I've got it all going on. I suppose I might be able to add an extra herb or something. If I wasn't straight with you before, that's because I wasn't being straight with myself. But now I've come away, and I've been able to think more clearly. Ray, I told you there wasn't anyone else. That's not strictly true. There's this girl. Yes, she is a girl. Early 30 at most, and she's very concerned about education in the developing world and fairer global trade. It wasn't really an sexual attraction thing. That was just a kind of byproduct. It was her untarnished idealism. It reminded me of how we all were once. You remember that, Ray? I'm sorry, Charlie, but I don't remember you ever being especially idealistic. In fact, you were always utterly selfish and hedonistic. Okay, maybe we were all decadent slobs back then, the lot of us, but there was always this other person somewhere inside me wanting to come out. That's what drew me to her. Charlie, when was this? When did this happen? When did what happen? This affair. There was no affair. I didn't have sex with her, nothing. I didn't even have lunch with her. I just made sure I keep seeing her. What do you mean keep seeing her? I drifted back into the kitchen. By this time was gazing at my concoction. Well, I kept seeing her, he said. I kept making appointments to see her. You mean she's a call girl? No, I told you we've never had sex. No, she's a dentist. I keep going back. Kept making things out about pain here, discomfort, or the gum there. You know, I spun it out. Of course, in the end, Emily guessed. For a second, Charlie seemed to be choking back a sob. Then the dam burst. She found out because I was flossing so much. She was now half shrieking. She said, "You never ever flossed your teeth that much." But that doesn't make sense. If you look after your teeth more, you have less reason to go back to her. Who cares if it makes sense? I just wanted to please her. Look, Charlie, you didn't go out with her. You didn't have sex with her. What's the issue? The issue is I so wanted someone like that. Someone who bring out this other me. The one that has been trapped inside. Charlie, listen to me. Since the last time you called, I've pulled myself together considerably. And quite frankly, I think you should pull yourself together too. We can discuss all of this when you get back. But Emily will be here in an hour or so, and I've got to have everything ready. I'm on top of things here, Charlie. I suppose you can tell from my voice. Fucking fantastic. You're on top of things. Great, some fucking friend. Charlie, I think you're upset because you don't like your hotel, but you should pull yourself together. Get things in perspective and take heart. I'm on top of things here. I'll sort out dog business, then I'll play my part up to the hilt for you. Emily, I'll say. Emily, just look at me. Just look at how pathetic I am. The truth is, most people are just as pathetic. But Charlie, he's different. He's in a different league. You can't say that. This sounds completely unnatural. Hello, Flynn. Of course I wouldn't put it literally like that, idiot. Look, just leave it to me. I've got the whole situation under control, so calm down. Now I've got to go. I put the phone down and examined the pot. The liquid had now come to a boil and there was a lot of steam about, but as yet no real smell of sort. I adjusted the flame until everything was bubbling nicely. It was around this point I was overcome by a craving for some fresh air, and since I hadn't yet invested their roof terrace, I opened the kitchen door and stepped out. It was surprisingly balmy for an English evening in an early June. Only a little bite in the breeze told me I wasn't back in Spain. The sky wasn't fully dark yet, but was already filling the stars. Beyond the wall that marked the end of the terrace, I could see for miles around the windows and backyards for the neighboring properties. A lot of windows were lit. The ones in the distance, if you narrowed your eyes, looked almost like an extension of the stars. This roof terrace wasn't large. There was definitely something romantic about it. You could imagine a couple in the midst of a busy city life coming out here on a warm evening and strolling around potted shrubs in each other's arms, swapping stories about their days. I could have stayed out there a little longer, but I was afraid of losing my momentum. I went back into the kitchen and, walking past the bubbling pot, paused at the threshold of the living room to survey my earlier work. The big mistake, it struck me, lay in my complete failure to consider the task from the perspective of a creature like Hendrix. The key, I now realized, was to immerse myself within Hendrix's spirit and visions. Once I started on this tack, I saw not only inadequacy of my previous efforts, but how hopeless most of Charlie's suggestions have been. Why would an over-lively dog extract a little ox ornament in the midst of a hi-fi equipment and smash it? And an idea of cutting open a sofa and throwing around the stuffing was idiotic. Hendrix would need razor teeth to achieve an effect like that. The capsized sugar bowl in the kitchen was fine, but the living room, I realized, would have been reconceptualized from the scratch. I went into the room in a crouched posture, so as to see it from something like Hendrix's eyeline. Immediately, the glossy magazine piled up on the coffee table revealed themselves as an obvious target, so I pushed them off the surface in a trajectory consistent with the shove of a rampant muzzle. The way the magazine landed on the floor looked satisfyingly authentic. Encouraged, I knelt down, opened one of the magazines, and scrunched up the page in a manner I hoped would find an echo. Even eventually, Emily came across the diary. But this time, the result was disappointing. Too obviously the work of a human hand rather than a canine teeth. I had fallen into my earlier error again. I had not emerge sufficiently with Hendrix. So I got on all fours, lowering my head towards the magazine, sank my teeth into the pages. The taste was perfumey and not all unpleasant. I opened a second fallen magazine near its center and began to repeat the procedure. The ideal technique, and began together, was not unlike the one needed in those fairground games where you try to bite apples bobbing in water without using your hands. What works best was a light chewing motion, the jaws moving flexible all the time. This would cause the pages to ruffle and crease nicely. Too focused a bite, on the other hand, simply stapled the pages together to no great effect. I think it was because I became so absorbed in these finer points that I didn't become aware sooner of Emily standing out in the hallway watching me just beyond the doorway. Once I did realize she was there, my first feeling wasn't one of panic or embarrassment but of hurt that she should be standing there like that without having announced her arrival in some way. In fact, when I remembered how I had gone to the trouble of calling her office only several minutes earlier precisely to preempt the sort of situation now engulfing me, I felt the victim of a deliberate deception. Perhaps that was why my first visible response was simply to give a weary sigh without making any attempt to abandon my all-fours posture. My sigh brought Emily into the room, and she laid a hand gently on my back. I'm not sure if she's actually knelt down, but her face seems really close to mine as she said, "Raymond, I'm back, so just sit down, shall we?" She was easing me up on my feet, and I shall resist the urge to shake her off. "You know it's odd," I said. "No more than a few minutes ago you were about to go into a meeting." "I was, yes, but after your phone call, I realized the priority was to come back." "What do you mean priority, Emily? Please, you don't have to keep holding my arm like that. I'm not about to topple over. What do you mean a priority to come back?" "Your phone call. I recognize what it's for, a cry for help." "It was nothing of that sort. I was trying to..." I trailed off because I noticed Emily was looking around the room and with an expression of wonder. "Oh, Raymond," she muttered almost to herself. "I suppose I was a little clumsy earlier on. I would have tied it up, except you came back early." I reached down to the fallen standard lamp, but Emily restrained me. "It doesn't matter, Ray. It really doesn't matter. We can sort it all out together later. You just sit down now and relax. Look, Emily, I realize it's your own home and all that, but why do you creep in so quietly?" "I didn't creep in, darling. I called when I came in, but you didn't seem to be here. So I popped into the loo, and when I came out, well, there you were. But why go over it? None of it matters. I'm here now, and we can have a relaxing evening together. Please sit down, Raymond. I will make some tea." She was already going towards the kitchen as she said this. I was fiddling with the shade of the standard lamp, so it took me a moment to remember what was in there, by which time it was too late. I listened for her reaction, but there was only silence. Eventually, I put down the lampshade and made my way into the kitchen doorway. The saucepan was still bubbling away nicely, the steam rising around the upheld sole of the boot. The smell, which I had barely registered at this point, was much more obvious in the kitchen itself. It was pungent, sure enough, and vaguely curryish. More than anything else, it conjured those times you yank your foot out of a boot after a long sweaty hike. Emily was standing a few paces back from the cooker, craning her neck to get a good view of this pot as possible from a safe distance. She seemed absorbed by the sight of it, and when I gave a small laugh to announce my presence, she didn't shift her gaze, let alone turn around. I squeezed past her and sat down on the kitchen table. Eventually, she turned to me with a kindly smile. It was a terribly sweet thought, Raymond. Then, as though against her will, her gaze was pulled back to the cooker. I could see in front of me the tipped up sugar bowl and the diary, and a huge feeling of weariness came over me. Everything felt suddenly overwhelming, and I decided the only way forward was to stop all games and come clean. Look, Emily, things might look a little odd here, but it was all because of this diary of yours. This one here. I opened it to the damaged page and I showed her. It was really, really wrong of me and I'm truly sorry, but I happened to open it and then, well, I happened to scrunch up the page like this. I may make like a less venomous version of my earlier action. Then look at her. To my astonishment, she gave the diary no more a cursory glance before turning back to the pot. Oh, that's just a jotter. Nothing private. Don't worry about it, Ray. Then she moved a step closer to the saucepan and studied it all the better. What do you mean? What do you mean don't worry about it? How can you say that? What's the matter, Raymond? It's just something to jot down stuff I might forget. But Charlie told me you would go ballistic. My sense of outrage now was added to the fact that Emily had obviously forgotten what she had been writing about me. Really? Charlie told you I would be angry? Yes! In fact, he said you had once told him you would saw his balls off if he ever peeked inside this little book. I wasn't sure if Emily's puzzled look was due to what I was saying or still left over from gazing the saucepan. She sat down next to me and thought for a moment. No, she said eventually. There was something else. I remember it clearly now. About this time last year, Charlie got despondent about something and asked what I would do if he committed suicide. He was just testing me. He's far too chicken to try anything like that. But he asked, so I told him if he had done anything like that, I would saw his balls off. That's the only time I've said that to him. I mean, it's not like a refrain on my part. I don't get this. If he committed suicide, you would do that to him afterwards? It's just a figure of speech, Raymond. I was just trying to express how much I would dislike him topping himself. I was making him feel valued. You're missing my point. If you do it afterward, it's not like it's really disincentive, isn't it? Or maybe you're right, it would be... Raymond, let's forget about it. Let's forget all of this. There's a lamb casserole from yesterday. There's half of it left. It's a pretty good last night. And it will be better tonight. And we can open a nice bottle of Bordeaux. It was awfully sweet of you to start preparing something for us, but the casserole, probably the thing for tonight, don't you think? All attempts to explain now seem beyond me. Okay, lamb casserole, terrific, yes, please do. So, can we put this away for now? Yes, please do. Please put it away. I got up and went to the kitchen, which of course was still a mess, but I no longer had the energy to start tidying. Instead, I lay down on the sofa and stared at the ceiling. At one point, I was aware Emily coming into the room, and I thought she had gone through the hall, but then I realized that she was crouching in the far corner, fiddling with the hi-fi. The next thing, the room is filled with the lush strings, bluesy horns, and Sarah Vaughan singing Lover Man. A sense of relief and comfort washed over me. Nodding to the slow beat, I closed my eyes, remembering how all those years ago in her college room, she and I had argued for over an hour whether Billie Holiday always sang this song better than Sarah Vaughan. Emily touched my shoulder and handed me a glass of red wine. She had a frilly apron over her business suit and was holding a glass for herself. She sat down at the far end of the sofa next to my feet and took a sip. Then she turned down the volume a little with her remote. It's been an awful day, she said. I don't mean just work, which is a total mess, but I mean Charlie going, everything. Don't imagine it doesn't hurt me. To have him go off abroad like that when we haven't made up. Then to cap it off, you finally go and tip over the edge. She gave a long sigh. No, really, Emily, it's not as bad as that. For a start, Charlie thinks a world of you, and as for me, I'm fine. I'm really fine. Bollocks. No, really, I feel fine. I mean, Charlie thinking the world of me. Oh, I see. If you think that's bollocks, you couldn't be more wrong. In fact, I know Charlie loves you more than ever. How can you know that, Raymond? I know because, well, for a start, he more or less told me when we were having lunch, and even if he didn't spell it out, I couldn't tell. Look, Emily, I know things are a bit tough right now. You've got to hang on to the most important things, which is that she still loved you very much. She did another sigh. You know, I haven't listened to this record for ages. It's because of Charlie. If I put this sort of music on, he immediately starts groaning. We didn't speak for a few moments, but just listened to Sarah Vaughan. Then, as an instrumental break started, Emily said, I suppose, Raymond, you prefer her other version of this. The version she did with just piano and bass. I didn't reply, but just propped myself a little more so as to sip my wine better. I bet you do. You prefer the other version, don't you, Raymond? Well, I said, I really don't know. To tell you the truth, I don't remember the other version. I could feel Emily shift at the end of the sofa. You're kidding, Raymond. It's funny, but I don't listen to this kind of stuff much these days. In fact, I've forgotten almost everything about it. I'm not even sure what song this is right now. I did a little laugh. Perhaps it didn't come out too well. What are you talking about? She sounds so suddenly crossed. That's ridiculous. Sort of having had a lobotomy. There's no way you could have forgotten. Well, a lot of years had gone by. Things change. What are you talking about? There was now a hint of panic in her voice. Things can't change that much. I was pretty desperate to get off the subject, so I said, Pity things are such a mess at your work. Emily completely ignored this. So what are you saying? You're saying you don't like this? You want me to turn it off? Is that it? No, Emily, please, it's lovely. It brings back memories. Please, just get back to being quiet and relaxed the way we were minutes ago. She did another sigh. When she next spoke, her voice was gentle again. I'm sorry, darling. I had forgotten. That's the last thing you need. Me yelling at you. I'm so sorry. No, it's okay. I heaved myself up to a stirring position, you know. Emily. Charlie's is a decent guy, a very decent guy, and he loves you. You won't do better, you know. Emily shrugged and drank some more wine. You're probably right. We are hardly young anymore. We are as bad as one another. We should count ourselves lucky, but we never seem to be contented. I don't know why. Because when I stop and think about it, I realize I don't really want anyone else. For the next minute or so, she keeps sipping her wine and listening to the music. Then she said, You know, Raymond, when you are at the party, at a dance, and it may be a slow dance and you are with the person you really want to be with, and the rest of the room is supposed to be vanished. But somehow it doesn't. It just doesn't. You know there's no one half as nice as the guy in your arms, yet, well, there are all these people everywhere else in the room. They don't leave you alone. They keep shouting and waving and doing daft things just to attract your attention. Oi, how can you be satisfied with that? You can do much better. Look over here. It's like they're shouting things like that all the time. It gets so hopeless. You can't just dance quietly with your guy. Do you know what I mean, Raymond? I thought about it for a while and then said, well, I'm not as lucky as you and Charlie. I don't have anyone special like you do. But yes, in some way, I know just what you mean. It's hard to know where to settle. What to settle to? Bloody right. I wish they would just lay off all these gate crashes. I wish they'd just lay off and let us get on with it. You know, Emily, I wasn't kidding just now. Charlie thinks a world of you, and he's so upset things haven't been going well between you. Her back was more or less turned to me. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then Sarah Vaughan began her beautiful, perhaps excessively slow version of April in Paris. Emily started up like Sarah had called her name, then turned to me and shook her head. I can't get over it, Ray. I can't get over how you don't listen to this kind of music anymore. We used to play all these records back then on that little record player Mom bought me before I came to the university. How could you just forget? I got to my feet and walked over to the French doors, still holding my glass. I looked out to the terrace. I realized my eyes filled with tears. I opened the door and stepped outside so I could wipe them without Emily noticing. But she was following right behind me, so maybe she noticed, I don't know. That evening was pleasantly warm. Sarah Vaughan and her band came drifting out onto the terrace. The stars were brighter than before, and the lights of the neighborhood were still twinkling like an extension of the night sky. I love this song, Emily said. I suppose you have forgotten this one too. But even if you've forgotten, you can dance to it, can you? Yes, I suppose I can. We could be Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Yes, we could. We placed our wine glasses on the stone table and began to dance. We didn't dance especially well. We kept bumping our knees, but I held Emily close to me, and my senses filled with the texture of her clothes, her hair, her skin. Holding her like this, it occurred to me again how much weight she had put on. You're right, Raymond, she said quietly in my ears. Charlie's all right. We should sort ourselves out. Yes, you should. You're a good friend, Raymond. What would we do without you? If I'm a good friend, I'm glad, because I'm not much good at anything else. In fact, I'm pretty useless, really. I felt a sharp tug on my shoulder. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't talk like that. Then a moment later again, you're such a good friend, Raymond. This was Sarah Vaughan's 1954 version of April in Paris, with Clifford Brown on trumpet, so I knew it was a long track, at least 8 minutes. I felt pleased about that, because I knew after this song ended, we wouldn't dance anymore, but go in and eat the casserole. And for all I knew, Emily would reconsider what I had done to her diary, and decide this time it wasn't such a trivial offense. What did I know? But another few minutes at least, we were safe, and we kept dancing under the starlit sky. And that is the end of Come Rain or Come Shine of Nocturnes by Kazuo Ishiguro. Thank you so much for listening to me today. Thank you for turning in to my stream. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think the short stories pacing is quite good. It always ends up around an hour and 45 minutes of reading. Yeah. Each chapter seems to be quite okay, I think. Yeah. I think something is wrong with my okay, I'm back. Hell Ryan, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for attending my reading session today. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that story. It's kind of a weird one. that there's music involved, but it wasn't like thank you so much. It wasn't like how like Kazuo Ishiguro like wrote something about music and all that, but he doesn't write it like the way Murakami would write it, where Murakami is like just showing off what kind of music he likes to listen to and all that, or what kind of wine. It's very different, definitely very different from the previous story. I think all of them, all of them are related to music and Nightfall. It's 5 stories of music and Nightfall. It's it's, if you think about it, there are similar themes. One is music, secondly is relationship. Like the first one, the relationship between an older singer and his wife are destined to end because of his career. And then this one is a bit more convoluted, definitely. Like, I'm not entirely sure what to make out of it. Like, it just seems like a problem between two person. The wife seems unsatisfied with the husband, not because she herself is unsatisfied with her husband, but the people around her is unsatisfied with her husband for some reason. So it's like kind of like peer pressure thing, which I completely understand. Kind of like your friends keep telling you that, oh, why are you with this guy, because you could do so much better, you know, that kind of, I can totally understand that. But from his point of view is that perhaps her weight gain, her getting older, and then there's this more younger and attractive dentist lady that he met, reminds her of the days when his wife used to be, you know. So he's attracted to that. And sometimes I feel like this kind of attraction is inevitable. I don't know. I'm not justifying cheating or anything like that. It's like sometimes feelings are just feelings. And in the end, he didn't act on it. He still loved his wife. He didn't act on it, but he just like keep wanting to go meet the dentist, you know, for what, just to romanticize a relationship with this woman, right? Relationship is a very, very convoluted thing, and I think Kazuo Ishiguro is very good at portraying relationships. It's very real. The way he portrays relationship is very real, in my opinion. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I really like it. And also one reason why I picked this book, so that you guys can get a glimpse of Kazuo Ishiguro's writing style. And compared to the book before that I was reading, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, I think I mentioned this same thing last stream, is that Kazuo Ishiguro's prose is so much better to read and so much smoother to read, because he's a novelist. Compared to the novel before, the writer is a playwright. So a playwright, the way he describes scenes is like very on point, but the prose is very stunted. Conversations feel stunted as well. So this one, oh, I just love Kazuo Ishiguro because of this, because the conversation that he can write, he's so good at writing conversation. Yeah, and it flows when you read it out loud. Basically, that's why I really like Kazuo Ishiguro. Yeah, there's definitely more to come. I bought through. I think. I don't know if you guys remember. I bought 3 new books, but one of the book needs a pre-order, and I asked the shop how long is the pre-order. It's gonna take 2.5 months. Sorry, 2.5 weeks to get to them before they can send it to me. Yeah, it definitely translate well into reading out loud. I think Kazuo Ishiguro stuff it translate well into reading it out loud for sure. For sure. I believe so. I just hope that I could do it justice with my poor English and my fucked up pronunciations. Yeah, so I sometimes I have difficulty in pronouncing some words, or especially when like I get nervous and then all the words just get jumbled up together, and I just fuck it up the entire prose. I hope I can do Kazuo Ishiguro justice by reading it properly. Yeah. But anyway, it is time for lunch, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys would like to redeem anything, a poem, a love quote, or a tarot reading, please do so in the next 5 minutes before I end my stream. Just let me know. There's a lot of lurkers right now. It's lunchtime. Lunchtime. Yeah. What are you guys planning to eat today? Oh, Beat, redeem a poem. Beat, I'm gonna give you something good. I'm gonna give you a selection of poems by Shirley Lim, a Malaysian American. I mean, she's now a professor in America, but she's originally from Malaysia. She writes really great poems. So I'm going to let you choose from page 224 to page 355. 224, 355, between 224 to 355, between 224 to 355. Yeah, but you have to choose, so you better choose a good one and not depressing one. That's why I didn't choose I didn't take Emily Dickinson's poetry, because she's depressing as fuck. 355, you want the last one? Oh, you are the teacher, huh? Okay, I'll see you, Yujong. Thank you for hanging out. See ya, see ya. Okay. Listen to this. The title of the poem for bid today is called The Ex-Lover by Shirley Lim. One day, you start walking away without realizing that's what you are doing. Even as you say, I love you, and beg for one more smile, you have gone down the road and out of sight. He thinks he's the one you live for, but it's months since you have left. The hot, steamy wind in your mouth you swallow with your goodbye tastes like life itself, bright, hopeful, scary life you run toward, better than love and its miserliness. or so she thinks, shrink wrapping the past. Sorry. Oh my god, let me start over. I just fucked up. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. I could be dyslexic because I was like reading it backwards. Okay, the poem for Bit's redemption is called The Ex-Lover by Shirley Lim. One day, you start walking away without realizing that's what you are doing. Even as you say I love you and beg for one more smile, you have gone down the road and out of sight. He thinks he's the one you live for, but it's months since you have left. The hot, steamy wind in your mouth you swallow with your goodbye tastes like life itself. Bright, hopeful, scary life you run toward. Better than love and its miserliness, or so she thinks, shrink wrapping the present in its past, the man in paper, carrying him like a paperback on the shuttle to another airport, another meeting. That's all. That's Ex-Lover, The Ex-Lover by Shirley Lim. A poem, redemption for Bit. Poems are great. Shit. Nice. Nice. Very nice indeed. Alrighty then. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and listening to me read. I always appreciate that. I always love to read for all of you. And I hope that I will see you guys soon on next Monday, Notables at the same time, 11 a.m. GMT plus 8. And tonight I have Borderline stream with Strudel, and Sam Crowley. I was supposed to attend Nata de Coco's wedding, but I have a stream scheduled and I cannot just ditch my boys basically. So send my best regards to Nata de Coco and their partner for their eternal bonding ceremony tonight, and I will be in Borderlands instead, unfortunately. But once again, thank you for attending my Nudibles session today on a Friday afternoon, and have a good day ahead. Have a great weekend ahead. I hope you guys enjoy your great weekend ahead. My parting advice for you this weekend is to follow your heart and love yourself. Thank you so much for being here with me again. I appreciate it a lot, and have a great day. Goodbye.